complicated. Hello. All right, it's exactly 11 o'clock. Should we get started?
All right, everyone. Thanks for coming to our didactic, and hello to everyone who's watching at home. So my name is Alexandra Nordberg. I'm the Assistant Program Director at UMass Medical Center in Worcester, Massachusetts. And this is our Education Committee-sponsored didactic, looking at early career planning, avoiding pitfalls, and trying to set yourself up for success early in your career. And so this is everyone here on our panel. We're going to go through introductions in just a moment. We have no financial disclosures. So our objectives here, we're going to anticipate common challenges early in your career, brainstorm strategies to prepare and overcome them, and also help you develop a personalized plan for yourself as a way to, kind of prep and move forward and be ready to succeed early in your career. We thought this was important considering that within SAEM, as an example, there's a lot of support for medical students, there's a good amount of support for residents, and then there's kind of this gap, and then there's mid-career support and things like that. And you'll hear a lot of support for junior faculty or mid-career faculty or like senior leadership and opportunities in there, but we identified this kind of, gap where it's kind of like you take this jump into a completely different position, going from resident to attending, or kind of like you're junior attending and maybe you have this new leadership role or something like that, and there's not a lot of talk about how to kind of manage that on your own from like a personalized standpoint. Oh, and this QR code that we have, so this is a way to ask anonymous questions if you would like. We know sometimes that with these maybe more personal topics, you might feel uncomfortable asking a question in front of other people here. It's totally fine. You can use a QR code that'll be on each slide, and you can anonymously submit questions that we will monitor in real time. So like I said, I'm Alex Nordberg. I'm the Assistant Program Director at UMass. I finished residency at UMass in 2018. I'm a Rams alum. I was the first president of Rams back in the day when it first started. I also completed the Armed Med Ed course, and currently on the Education Committee where I met these awesome people. As a personal introduction, I am married. I have one child who's 16 months old, and one very energetic dog. And really, at this point in my career, trying to balance, working on work-life balance, which is very challenging right now. So that's me.
I'm Miriam Kulkarni. I am the program director at St. John's Riverside Hospital in Yonkers. I've been in EM for 15 years. I've been on a bunch of SAM committees, as you can see. I am married. I have 3 kids. I have a daughter who's 10 who has autism, and I have now my twins are 9. They just turned 9. And definitely have spent a lot of time in that space where I'm sort of juggling, kids and the demands of my residency and sort of the demands of my own academic career and academic advancement.
Hi, I'm Sandy Werner, and I'm kind of the more seasoned representative in the group. So I have just a few more than 15 years in emergency medicine. I'm currently the vice chair at Metro Health Medical Center, Case Western. I have been on a number of SAEM committees and chaired a couple subcommittees and all that kind of good stuff. So what else am I supposed to say? Anyway. I'm actually from Colorado originally. I just bought property there, so I'm thinking I'll go back there sometime soon. I'm married for over 30 years. We don't have any kids, have a couple horses, and I'm kind of here to set the perspective of like how to survive a career and how not to make the mistakes that I did. So that's kind of my role here.
Hi, I'm Meredith Von Dohlen. I am probably opposite of that. I'm the youngest, I think, in emergency medicine. I am the clerkship director at UAMS, which is the University of Arkansas in Little Rock. I also am married. I have 2 young children. I've been faculty now for about 3 years. I've also been part of the our Med Ed group, which is actually, I think, where I met Alex, and also on the Education Committee and the Faculty Development Committee and the DEI Committee. But I've been on quite a few committees trying to figure out what I like and kind of involvement.
This seems to be on, we think, so try it.
Yes, I'm Daniel Jourdan. I'm the Rams president currently. I'm a third year at Henry Ford in Detroit. I've been on a number of committees, education, research mentorship, nominating program. I'm primarily here to moderate, which is why I have my phone out. I'm looking for any questions from you all. I'm not just texting, so that's all. Thanks.
Alrighty, and then so I'm going to take a seat, and then Dan, if you want to come up and do our slide advancement. All right, so our first topic is personal professional integration. We purposely called it integration and not balance. As you'll commonly hear, balance implies that at any given moment you're striving for balance in all things, which is not true. You are striving for overall balance, but this sense of the visualization of like that seesaw that's perfectly balanced is not true, because at any one moment in time, things are not balanced. You're choosing at any one time to do work and be committed to work, or you're choosing to be committed to your personal life, whatever that means for you. So some people are just better at this than others. Like I had said before, this is an area that I'm really working on for myself right now with my new family and kind of the demands that everything brings simultaneously. I think for me, having a support system is so important. My husband is so supportive and has a job that allows him to have more flexible hours to kind of go around my schedule a little bit more. So I think it's whether you have a significant other or finding colleagues at work you can lean on from like a personal lens. I think that's super important and something that is going to really help you succeed in that first job after residency.
I would echo the importance of sort of choosing the right partner and communicating clearly with your partner. My husband is a teacher, and especially now that our children are school age, he's free when they're free, and it really has sort of allowed me to have a lot of freedom, right? I'm here, my children are, in Westchester, New York, where my husband is. And I think, when you are entering into a relationship, in the relationship that you have, you just have to really be sort of upfront and communicative about what your career is going to look like. And I think the other sort of trade-off that I make is that when I'm the breadwinner for my family, so when I am contemplating changing a job, for example, that is something that I absolutely do in conjunction with my husband. And when I accepted the position that I have now, it's absolutely something that we talked about. And I sat there with him, and the whole salary package and benefits package and everything about those positions, we absolutely had a conversation with. And I think that's tremendously important to sort of think about. But I could not do this without the partner that I have.
Yeah, it's kind of taking the long view. Negotiation is really important, and also considering what you have to do versus what tasks can somebody else do. So if both of you are in residency together, which can be tremendously difficult, you need to look at things, can we get our food delivered? Can we have pre-cooked meals? One of our residents, we had to have a day every so often where they can, just tell us the cool stuff they found. And one of the residents came and she said, I just found the best thing in the world. I found a laundry service that will fold, they'll wash my clothes, they'll fold them, and I get them back the next morning. And I swear that half of our residents, the end of the week were using that service because it was cheap, but it allowed her to have the time that she needed to do other stuff. She happened to have a kid, she previous to residency, so she had a 4-year-old, and she was like, this is just for me, and it allowed her to use her time wisely. So think about things that you can outsource from your cleaning, whatever, so that the time that you're not working, you can actually use that time to spend with your family. And the other thing is you have to schedule time off. So when you are on vacation, you are on vacation. And you really need to make that clear in your mind and in your boss's mind that, you are not going to respond to emails, et cetera. So I'm vice chair, which basically means that, if my chair is off, I'm like that person. And he's the kind of guy who keeps his phone with him all the time. And I told him, when I took that position, I said, you need to understand I am not like you. I will not have my phone on when I am on vacation. I will not respond to emails unless it's something super critical, because I'm not like you. I'm not going to be plugged in when I don't have to be. That's like really critical to maintaining that balance. So don't allow job creep. Just be really clear on that. And yeah, there's going to be times when, like so when we had COVID, I was in charge of the COVID medical care protocol. So I had to work with all of the different departments because I happened to be medical staff president at the time. And I told Greg, I said, for the next 3 months or whatever, I'm simply not going to be here. I'm not going to be available. And then, right after that, as soon as I could be clear, I said, okay, now I'm going to take 3 weeks off and not do any work. So just, you have to kind of communicate that stuff, and there's going to be an ebb and flow, and make it clear at your job too, that yes, if I'm going to commit 12 weeks to this project, then I'm going to, work a normal or less than normal schedule afterwards, because I need to have that integration.
So I'm a big proponent of the saying, you can have it all, just maybe not all at the same time. And I think that's traditionally been used a lot in reference to female physicians, but I really feel like that applies to all of us. Like, for me, yes, it has a lot to do with my family, my children, but it also, I was just telling Alex earlier, like, I have to schedule time to work out. Like, these other things that are really important to you, whether you have a family, whether you have a partner, you're single, or whatever is important to your life, you really have got to define what is your top priorities and then create your boundaries to align with your top priorities. So it's really easy, especially early in career, to say, yes, I will help with that. And yes, I'm going to help with this project. And oh, I should really help with that. And now you end up having your plate so full that I will tell you, when I first had my first child, I'd put my child down to sleep, and then I would every night bring out my laptop and work on things. And I finally got to the point where I realized that wasn't how I wanted to spend every night. And so you just have to figure out what your top priorities are and then align your boundaries to meet those. It's okay to say no early in career. And I remember someone telling me that, and I will tell you, I probably didn't listen, or I didn't think it was as important, but it's okay to say no to things that maybe aren't as important or that you think may not get you to your end goals. So kind of defining that early on, I think, is especially important, and that's important kind of for everyone, right? So whether you're willing to spend all that extra time, unpaid early in your career because you think that or know you'll get that back later in your career, that's okay. Or if you're deciding, I don't have that time right now, and maybe I'll commit that time later, you just have to make those decisions early on and then kind of be true to those priorities and values.
Yeah, I will just kind of add a little bit more to that. So especially when you talk about having a job in academics, the line between your time for work and your personal time is so easily blurred. And I think that's something that we don't really talk about a lot, yet we all struggle with, and how to literally setting physical time barriers in terms of, this is my family time, this is my personal time, this is my workout time, and I'm not doing charts, and I'm not looking at email, and I'm not like responding to these phone calls, you know, like that sort of thing, because that's the only way that you're going to protect yourself to have for your like career longevity, right? To like actually like work like full-time emergency medicine throughout your career. And, you know, things like SAEM, fantastic, you know, and you're going to be bombarded with opportunities to do this committee and to do that project, or like something comes up at your institution and someone's going to ask you to do something. But 100%, like, don't say yes to everything. Say yes to things that are in the wheelhouse of what you want to go into. Don't say no to everything, because then opportunities won't come along. No one will ask you anymore if you say no to absolutely everything. But you do have to protect yourself to some degree. No one else is looking out for you. You are looking out for you. So protecting your time is very important.
So I would say just a couple of other really quick thoughts. So one of them is, in terms of deciding what to say yes to and what to say no to, make sure that you follow through on the things that you say yes to. Because you don't want to have the reputation for being someone who accepts things and then kind of lets them fall flat. And that's one of the big dangers in terms of saying yes to too many things. The other things that I think weren't apparent to me when I was just starting out on my academic career. So there are some things that about being an academician that makes it harder. Like all of us were saying, that there's kind of job creep. But there's some things that make it easier. I mean, right now, I work about one clinical shift a week. And when you're working a clinical shift, I mean, you have to be there when it starts, you have to stay there until it ends, right? And there's no flexibility there. The academic stuff that I do, a lot of it is incredibly flexible, and I can do it from home, and I can do it, you know, in my pajamas after my kid goes to sleep, or if, you know, one of my kids is sick at school and someone needs to pick them up, I can leave and go pick up my kid and finish my day from home. Like, there's a lot about academics that really facilitates being a parent or pursuing other interests that you have. And the last thing that I kind of wanted to say is, you know, especially if you're deciding that you're going to have kids, or especially if you have a really strong interest outside of emergency medicine, I think it was tempting for me to kind of look at people who had graduated from residency with me or graduated from medical school with me and kind of look at their time frame and be like, well, they're already PD or they're already vice chair and I'm not those things. And I think that that's another thing that you have to kind of like, your time frame is your time frame, and you do things when you're ready to do them. And your career kind of follows on its own trajectory. And as long as you are fulfilled and happy and learning in the place that you are, give yourself some grace and don't compare yourself to other people.
I would just add, you know, look at if you're an academician, you also need to start early looking at what your requirements are to get promoted.
Yeah.
And say yes to things that are going to help you in that trajectory. And when you say yes to something, make sure you know exactly what you're saying yes to. So I recently, one of my colleagues in infectious disease said, hey, will you help me with this NIH grant? I have never filled out an NIH grant proposal before in my life. And I just said, well, of course, because I'm all into HIV testing and the ED. Well, that was a mistake. I should have said exactly what you need me to do, because it turned out to be a lot of work. And if we don't get the grant, I'm going to be really unhappy.
Any questions from the audience? Yeah. Oh, yes, and if you guys don't mind, coming to the mic so that we can get it for people watching from home.
So kind of along the lines of the topic of kind of managing your own time and everything, what I'm starting to realize is now that I'm working in a lot of groups, like I'm terrible at managing my own time and taking on too many things, but now I'm waiting on timelines of other people. And so I'm falling into the trap of they turn something in last minute. Now I have to compress time and do all my things. So kind of like what, to meet a deadline or something. So kind of how do you maybe communicate that with, your boss of these people aren't helping with my timeline, or, how do you have grace to let something totally fall through because, other people weren't kind of helping you meet those deadlines and everything.
I think we could have a whole separate talk about managing, working in groups.
Team management. So if you are I will say if you are a team leader, That means that you're taking on the responsibility to get your team to the end goal. And so there's obviously an end deadline for whatever, it's a grant proposal or something. When you have this is a whole there's like lots of discussions and books about like how to run meetings and what can be an email versus a meeting and things like that, but you're going to be succinct. You're going to give people definable tasks, and you're going to give them deadlines for those tasks that are way sooner than the end overall.
Yep.
And you're going to give them deadlines knowing that we're all emergency physicians and we will all do this at the last minute, and they'll be like, oh man, I needed more time than you said. So you as a team leader are going to set deadlines for different pieces of your overall big project so that you will have a grace period of 2 weeks, or some time for you to get everything together and finalize it before, your presentation, before your grant proposal, something like that. So that is definitely tough. Also something that, you'll get voluntold to lead a meeting or something as a junior faculty, and you kind of feel like you have no idea what you're doing. And learning to manage people and manage a team is definitely a skill. So definable tasks, set deadlines that are way sooner than the actual real deadlines.
And send out ticklers, right?
Yeah.
You want to remind people. And you
Yeah.
can even schedule these like through your emails that, hey, you have this project due on such and such a date. That will help them get done. And then also, remember, if this is something you're ultimately turning into your chair and somebody is just not doing it, it's maybe it's going around maybe it's going around their back a little bit, but I will say, hey, I'm having some difficulty getting this person to do the task. Or I will reach out to the person and say, hey, I really need this. If you're not going to be able to do it, I need to know it now, because I am responsible for this to be turned in, by such and such a date, and that means I'm counting on you guys. And if somebody says, I just found out, my mom has cancer or something like that, then okay, we're gonna find somebody else.
Right.
So that's useful too.
I was going to say what helps me and is figuring out how the people in your group work. So me personally, I work really well under a deadline. All the other times I just kind of like, well, this could work and that could work. When I have a deadline, I know I have to put something down and get it done. And so for me, that's the time I reserve to do it. So when I work on a group, I try to figure out how the other people work, because some of my colleagues where I work now, they like to do things way in advance. That just works for them. That's how their brain works. They like it that way. And so if I know I'm working with those types of people, then I will try to give myself an earlier deadline. But it just kind of helps to know how the other people on your team work and function and how their brain works. And so that could maybe help you. That way, if you know that they are like me and like to work under that deadline, then like Alex said, right, you can bump up that deadline and give them a firm deadline, but still gives you enough time on the backside, so you're not feeling like you also have to work under the deadline like they prefer.
I think in the interest of time, we're going to move on a little bit. So our next topic, self-advocacy and finance and negotiations and that sort of thing. So from a topic of finance, I will say that it is so easy as a resident or a fellow to put blinders on to every real life stuff, and to be retirement, I will worry about that when I have a job that doesn't require me to work 24/7, things like that. But I would encourage you to, while you are a resident or especially junior faculty, to really consider this your first year out of training. You should make a budget and stick to your budget, keeping in mind that it is important to treat yourself, right? You're doing really hard job. There's a lot of mental and physical load that goes into being an emergency physician. So you need to treat yourself. That's part of being, a person and enjoying life, but just making sure that it fits with your overall financial goals. We talk a lot with our residents about disability insurance. I won't belabor this but you want disability insurance, and you want to get it when you are young. It is a little bit expensive. It will probably run you a few $100s a month, but the younger you get it, the cheaper it is, and if you get it when you are a trainee, then you get locked into a discounted rate. You want your disability insurance to be own occupation, meaning if you get disabled for whatever reason and you can no longer work as an emergency medicine physician, you will get your disability payout. There are lots of ways and resources to go about doing that. There might be someone at your institution that you can reach out to, but that's definitely something to look into while you are still in training, kind of like a small piece into kind of your overall financial wellness as you move forward in your career.
I think we should talk about sort of negotiating like within the professional space.
Yes.
This is definitely not something that I had any experience with or really had thought about before I was in the position to kind of do it. So first of all, before you start a job, before you accept a job, you and the person who's employing you should be on exactly the same page in terms of what the expectations are, what the metrics are going to be in terms of whether you're doing a good job, what the compensation is going to be, what the sort of parameters around you leaving the job will be. And when you are getting the contract and signing the contract, that's the chance for that to happen. Once you've signed the contract, you've committed to something, and it's much harder to change something if you would have wanted to change it. And not only that, if you start a job and you and your employer sort of have a different vision of what that job is going to look like, you're kind of setting yourself up to have a difficult time. Another thing, so make sure that you have a completely upfront and candid conversation especially if you're taking an academic position, especially if there's protected time involved, because there are going to be expectations around that time. And they are going to have deliverables that they expect from you, but sometimes people are not explicit about what that means and what they're looking for. And academic time is incredibly expensive. I did not realize this until I accepted the position I have now. And my current employer said, well, an hour of academic time costs us $10,000, it was like eye-opening for me because I knew it cost money, but I had no idea how much it was. And I actually think that that's probably a pretty good number. It may be up or down depending on where you are in the country, but it's about that much. So if someone is giving you 2 hours of protected time, that is costing them $20,000 a year. So you have to deliver $20,000 worth of product. But that has been, that is like absolutely key if you are thinking about an academic position, if you're accepting an academic position. Make sure that you understand what they're expecting from you. Make sure that you understand what success in that position looks like. Because I definitely have had a lot of colleagues kind of get themselves in trouble. And now as program director, have put people in trouble when I don't think that they're delivering enough for that time that we've given them. So make sure that you understand what the expectations are for sure. And when you're asking for protected time, understand that it's an expensive thing to ask for.
Yeah, it should be dedicated time. So not just protected, but dedicated. And it's dedicated to something of value to your department, to your institution. So it's not like they're giving you something. You are providing them a service that they are willing to give you that much time to do. And for women in the audience, I can't remember the author of this book, but there's a book, it's called Women Don't Ask. And she wrote another book accompanying it, and you need to read those books before you go into any negotiation because we think differently and we don't ask for stuff. In fact, there's good data that shows for jobs, men who have 60% of the qualifications will apply, but for women, and we read the job description and we say, and we don't apply until we have 80 to 90% of the qualifications, or we feel that way. So our self-worth, we perceive ourselves as being less worthwhile. So, man, you really need to look at that, and you need to ask for transparency. What are your colleagues getting? make darn sure that you are getting the equal thing. And if that information is not shared, I would think strongly about not working for that group. And you need to ask about how positions are, how positions with dedicated time are, how is that decision made? In my department, up until fairly recently, it was basically the chair would come up to you and ask you, hey, I think you'd be good at this. We did not have an open application process, and I felt that was absolutely wrong. So now all of our positions, if you want to be operations director and that becomes open, if you want PD, associate PD, assistant PD, whatever, it's now done by application and by interview. And I'll tell you, we got a new PD that I had no idea had any interest, and he's fabulous. And if we hadn't done it that way, he wouldn't have been picked. So, and just remember that. And remember, especially if you're a woman or an underrepresented minority, that there's a minority tax, and you need to make sure when you discuss with your employer their expectations that you need time. If they're going to expect you to sit on all the DEI committees and do all of that kind of stuff, that you need to have the time to do that, but you also need to have the time to do your academic work. So that's a super important item in negotiation.
So I 100% agree with that book. I actually did a book club at our institution based on the book, and it was phenomenal. So I highly recommend to read it. I think most of us already know it. It's just like we have to be told it. We're really bad at negotiating traditionally, and it really helps you get to a better place. I would say, just real quick, self-advocacy is the number one thing number one skill I really feel like you should learn early in your career, because you're going to do it all throughout your career. Some people are more comfortable with it than others. I tend to be a little bit more uncomfortable, so you really just have to lean into it because it's not going away and you're your best advocate. So if you can kind of be more comfortable and learn how to sharpen that skill better now, it's going to serve you the rest of your career.
Do you have a question?
Two quick questions. One, what was the name of the book again?
Women Don't Ask.
Thank you. The other question I had, specifically related to self-advocacy, is specifically, what ways do you recommend going about it in the academic setting? And I think one of the problems that kind of leads up to that is I feel it is hard to clearly delineate what value you provide as an educator versus like, I brought in this grant funding, or like I generated these RVUs, where it's harder to delineate like, I taught really well. And so like, how do you advocate like, no, I want this buy down, and for me, it's not even so much the money, it's that like, I want to make sure, because I'm willing to accept less money, I just want to make sure you're still valued for what you do. So how do you advocate for a contract in a way that like demonstrates that they value, that you're valued in that way and that your work is valued, especially when, because I was at a talk earlier where they kind of talked about like, at faculty groups for like academics, like how much room for negotiation is there? And a lot of times they say like, no, here's the base pay. They might have like plus like a bonus and or plus like depending on like a RVU bonus or things like that. But they're kind of like, there's not a lot of wiggle room. So how do you make sure you actually advocate for yourself and get the protected time you need or make sure you're valued?
So you're right. There may not be a ton of wiggle room in terms of the salary. And I think that is a model that a lot of groups are adopting, specifically because they want to be more transparent, right? And they want to say, everyone who we hire fresh out of residency, they get, $100 a year, and that's how much we pay. There probably is more wiggle room around how much dedicated time you have, for example. So that's a way that you can advocate for yourself in terms of, well, I'm going to give, I gave 5 talks at SAEM, and I'm, heading this committee, and I, started this program for the residents, and that's, usually there's more wiggle room around that. The other thing that I have advocated for on other people's behalves and told them to advocate for is if you decide that you want to say, I don't know, take over the research program for your department, you can say, can you send me to ARMID, or can you send me to Merck, and can the department pay for that on top of my CME? And when you get benefits like that, the other thing to kind of keep in mind is they're not taxed, right? we are in a very high income bracket. We're very heavily taxed. Any dollar that they give you, a third of it is taken away by the tax man. But if they give you, if they send you to ARMID, if they give you, 4 extra hours of dedicated time, if they give you more CME, those things are not taxed, and so they actually are worth more. And a lot of times there's more wiggle room in those things, particularly with the idea of, like, if you say, I want to do a master's degree, can you pay the tuition for it? Like, it's particularly around the idea of training you to better assume a role that they want. And that also sort of advances you and gives you credentials that you can use if you, decide you want to leave later.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is align your request, your advocacy with the institution and your department's goals and mission. So if one of your department's missions is to, better educate the residents or whatever, you can say, we lack anybody with a med ed degree. And, it would be great if we could do a med ed fellowship. And I am willing to take on that role if you will pay my tuition to get this master's degree. So they're going to pay and provide me the time to take the degree. And here's what I will provide for you. But if you tie what your desire is to the department's goals or the institution's goals, that will make it so much easier for you to advocate for your desires, because then it becomes, hey, here is what I can do for you. And that I have found has been super useful. I've gotten lots of stuff paid for by
Yeah, that's also the
by
basis
doing
of the
that.
book Getting to Yes, which is a
yes.
book about
Yes, that's a great
negotiation.
book.
It's a pretty easy read. It is like basic skills. It's like self-advocacy 101, Getting to Yes. Quick, easy read, and tells you how to frame your thought processes, how you're going to have the conversation, what you're going to say, things like that, in terms of so both parties get a positive net benefit out of the topic that you were negotiating.
The other thing I was thinking about when you asked that question was they like to see outcomes, right? So if you're already doing all the education pieces, creating some kind of outcome measure, whether that's increasing your residents' knowledge or your medical students, or, that your students are more engaged, or your students want to become part of your department more because of your efforts. Some way to show them, like, this is what I'm interested in, and look, I'm already doing it. So how, and then you can ask for what you want, right? Like, that's another way, especially, I know all of us in our education, right? We're already doing it. I think we're just not as great about showing those outcomes. And it's kind of hard in education, but there's definitely ways to do it. And that can make your ask even stronger. Like, I'm already doing it, and I can add X, Y, and Z to that. And this is what I would like to help me get there.
And then on that, how do you decide when to, I feel like when you say, I appreciate that, put it in writing, it might be kind of like poorly received, but also like if it's not in writing, it's harder for them to have to honor it. Like, where do you kind of decide, like, no, we really want to support you in like teaching, but then it just becomes like, oh yeah, you had this buy down and we're asking you to do X number of things. And so making sure you're actually advocating for yourself and making sure you're not kind of getting worked a little bit.
Annual performance evaluation time, because it's kind of like a mini contract. And so you're going to go in there and say, and usually you're provided in advance, but when you come to do that your APE, part of that, it's written in there, is that you are going to be provided time and money to do X, Y, and Z. And so it's actually written down.
I mean, I think even if it's outside of that time, if they have, changed your clinical hours, if you've taken on a different role, if now you're APD, then I think that's the time to ask for it, to say, is it possible for me to have a revised contract that reflects my different academic hours? If what they're buying you is, say, tuition to a master's program, just emailing back and forth is enough of a written contract, right? That you can say, just to confirm, I'm applying to, Jim Bob's fantastic master's degree in education program. The tuition is X per year. It will be reimbursed by the department. It will be paid up front by the department.
And having that in email is sufficient?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So the other thing is that if you get out of a conversation where something was agreed upon,
Follow-up emails.
and you can go back, like, the second you are done with that meeting
Yep.
and say, like, email the person, CC, who, maybe someone needs to be CC'd, whatever, and say, you know, I just wanted to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to summarize what we had agreed upon. That way,
Yep.
it is in writing. It is in that
Yep.
email, and it is traceable.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's how you are able to advocate for yourself and keep other people accountable for the things that they said.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I do an email every time. Like if
Yeah.
I go into a meeting, I'm like, hey, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. I send an email within like 24, 48 hours. And I'm like, hey, I'm just following up. I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm still interested or, you know, whatever we're talking about every time.
Right, and even if you haven't gotten the outcome that you want, right? If they said, you know, you said, can I have, you know, 3 hours of dedicated time for this, and they said, well, I want you to publish 50 papers first, you send them an email that says, just to, you know, to reflect our conversation that, you know, once I've published 50 papers, then, you know, I will have, you know, 3 extra hours of
We gotta
dedicated time.
The other thing is that many institutions have deals with other institutions of higher education. And you get your institution to pay the bill so that you're never involved in actually doing the financial part of
right.
it. Yeah. I just wanted to also advocate for getting a coach. So if you're at the point where you're not sure what you want to do, you have difficulty advocating for yourself, it's, you know, it used to be kind of like weird stuff getting a professional coach or a life coach. I have to tell you, I'm now currently taking getting my certification in coaching, and yes, Metro is paying for it. But I had a new position that I wasn't expecting to take, and I didn't know what to do with it. And as part of my negotiation, I said, I need a coach to help me do this. And you can hire a coach on your own, and man, they will work with you to develop not only what your desires are, but how to get them out of whoever you're trying to get them out of. So it's a little expensive, but man, you know, if you're really stuck, get a coach.
Thank you.
All right, and then, so kind of moving on to our last topic, professional development and climbing that ladder. And we've talked a little bit about advancements and promotion and things like that. So when you enter the academic realm, a lot of your pay and, you know, your title is based on promotion process. And so SAEM, being involved in SAEM in these committees is definitely one way to do that. And it is relatively easy, and to continue to stay involved as a resident and junior faculty. You know, it's a matter of watching your emails for signups for committees, joining a committee. We all join the education committee. And then using SAEM as an example, each committee has objectives. These objectives are then tasks, and each objective has a leader or a co-leader. So that's like a leadership experience. And then you develop a deliverable, this didactic, that this is all going on our CVs as part of, you know, a national conference involved in a national committee, co-leading a subcommittee for a national thing. Those are 3 things from this didactic, you know, that we're all putting on our CVs. And, you know, certainly there is a balance of you do the things that you do in academics because you are passionate about it and you believe in it and you want to help others and serve emergency medicine. But then there's also, like, you have to, it's a little bit of a game. Like, you got to play the game too. Like, you got to make sure that you're filling the boxes so that you can promote, so that your career can move on as well and have the trajectory that you want it to have. If you're fine with where you are, fine, you're fine with where you are, that's awesome. If you have a goal that you want to get to the next step, you have to keep in mind what steps you need to take to get to that next point, which is, you know, doing the publications or the committee involvement or the national speaking presentations, things like that. So kind of using SAM as an example, it's a great way to stay involved in your early career, kind of help you figure out what niche you want. Mentorship, meeting other people who are going to help you get to where you want to be in your career, and that sort of thing. So just kind of, keeping a mind on how your career trajectory is going and what you can do to help it.
Should we go through the slides?
Yeah.
So when you join an academic institution, read the promotion guidelines. What do I have to do? I actually meet with, when we hire new physicians, I meet personally with every single one of them. Initially when they come on board and after their first year, and then I usually can assign them to a different mentor. But that part of that is, here's what it takes. So you need to design your yeses and nos around what's going to get you promoted. You need to know if your institution has a requirement, a time requirement to get promoted. A lot of places are doing away with that because it now, because it places an undue burden on women, on anybody who has to take some time off to be a caregiver, anyone who has like a significant illness. You have this 10-year deadline to get promoted to associate professor, and you have 3 kids, or your mom is in palliative care for 2 years and whatever. Those timelines are unreasonable. So a lot of places are doing away with them, but some of the big institutions still have them. So you need to make sure about that. And then you need to look at it, and that will help you frame what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to. I sit on our APT committee, and we get people who want to be promoted, and they've done all this stuff at Case. But you know what? It doesn't matter. If they don't have a regional presence and a budding national presence, they won't get promoted to associate professor, period. End of discussion. I don't care how much stuff they've done. I can't do it. Anyway, but there are so many things in SAEM that you can get involved with that will help you along the way. And there's kind of this career roadmap. The SAEM website is a marvel. I mean, there is just more stuff on there. I just became co-chair of our DEI committee, and I found the SAEM curriculum on that, and I was like, holy cow! So there's just so much stuff on there that you can use, and this is a great way to kind of help you with your career, your roadmap, and so you can actually navigate to that page and take a look at it.
So the roadmap is like a little bit of a manual for how to get to a specific place in your career. But there's stuff at SAM for like every stage in your career. So there's RAMs.
You wanted to speak to kind of your...
RAMS is awesome. If you're here, you're already a member. That's literally the barrier to join. From there, you join any committee. You end up working with wonderful folks like the 4 of these people here, doing didactics. Running for the board is actually a low barrier to entry to be on the board. Usually we just look for any national involvement whatsoever. You end up working on national products, such as like that roadmaps on the previous page. All the faculty are super interested in working with you on a ton of stuff, even stuff you don't have any idea about, like avoiding pitfalls early in your career, such as me. I'm still doing that. As a RAMS president, I would say I truly encourage you, just get involved. If you just go to a committee meeting, that's all it takes. Then somebody's going to tell you to do this. They're going to assign you times to meet with people, and all of a sudden you're standing on the stage having no idea what's going on.
So I would definitely, real quick, add to that, like, there are so many opportunities within all the committees to do things on your own time. So even if you can't commit to that meeting every month, going as often as you can, paying attention to emails. I've done a couple of the RAMS guides for medical students. It's like you can be a writer, an editor, and those the writing takes a little bit of time, but if you pick a piece that's shorter, like a Pulse article or something, it doesn't take that much time. It forces you to kind of hone those skills that you'll need anyways. I did the DEI curriculum. I did a couple of those. You can do these things on your own time, and they go to your CV, and they're national curriculum, things that you can do and get involved. So just pick a committee, join it. If you hate it, it's fine. You get to drop it the next year. You can even stop going to the meetings, but pick at least a committee and just kind of see what it's about, see what things you can get involved with. You will find and meet so many wonderful people that will help you in your career. To kind of piggyback on the PNT thing, to get promoted, you have to have letters from people that are outside your institution that you don't work with. And if you think about that, you have to meet other people. And so this is a great way to do that, because you can't ask for recommendation letters from like your boss or people, your colleagues, and they have to be above your current level. So I'm an assistant professor, so to get to an associate, I have to find 3 or 4, I think it's 4, people outside my institution that know me, that are associates or higher, that are willing to write me a letter for promotion. And so committees can kind of help you start that process.
Right, and it's also like a great way to meet people sort of outside of your region, right?
Yeah.
And that, because that looks better.
Yeah.
And on these committees, because they're national, there'll be people from all over the place. There'll be people who are at sort of different levels than you are, and if you're junior, you're usually more senior. And it's a great way to network, which is awesome.
And get yourself invited to come and do grand rounds at their facilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and we just wanted to run real quickly kind of through the different opportunities at SAEM, because there's different things. There's interest groups, and these are kind of the least formal, or at least they have the least requirements from the SAEM Board of Directors. And you can actually join in anytime. And they do all kinds of projects. I mean, even though they're not formally committees, they don't have charges from the board, that kind of stuff. You can get involved with a lot of stuff. I met a resident who had gone to the telehealth interest group, and she was like, I had no idea that all this stuff was going on. And she's like, wow, now I'm working on these 2 projects. And so, she just went to one meeting, and she was like, I'm turned on to telehealth. So that's the interest group, and again, and there's good mentorship, leadership opportunities there. And then we also have the academies, and you can join these anytime, and these are also pretty big bodies. They do have some charges from the board as to what they need to get done, but it's a little bit lower than the committee. And again, you can do so much work. There's research going on through the academies. I mean, the Ultrasound Academy, I'm missing the Sono games today.
The Academy runs sim wars, like they do a lot of cool stuff that there's absolutely room for people who are junior to be involved in.
Yep. And they also, they support research, and you can network because you get on that academy, and you have access to all of those people, and you can post a message saying, hey, I'm starting this research project, and I would really like to talk to some other people who've done this, and you'll get a bunch of answers. So those are really cool. And then the committees are a little more formal. You can only apply once a year. They only take so many people, although most of the committees are pretty large. The board gives the committees their objectives, right? So it's worked out between the committees and the board. So you really, and the expectation is that if you sign on to an objective or to lead a subcommittee, that you really will get it done. So it's a little bit more formal of a commitment. But you'll also meet some of the power players in SAEM if you join the committees, because the committee chairs and the board, and you're going to get more tied in that way. So that's a more formal way. I started with interest groups, and then I joined a couple of academies, and actually that's given me a couple of national presentations there. And now I'm on a couple of different committees. But it does help with letters. It also helps with like institutional recognition. For our promotions, we can provide names, but they all have to be arm's length. So it's like people who know of our work, but who we have not worked directly with. And that becomes much easier if you have some contacts at other institutions. Anyway. So, yeah.
I mean, the committee by itself is scholarship, right? I mean, it definitely leads to scholarship. I have gotten a ton of didactics like this one, a ton of papers from work with committees, but the committee by itself is national scholarship, and shows that the fact that you were chosen to be on the committee shows that you have a national presence.
Yes, but you need to do something with that committee. So just being a member isn't good enough. So work, get yourself on an objective, so that you can say subcommittee member, blah, blah, produce, blah, blah, blah. So don't just be don't be a wallflower committee member. Pick one thing, and then do something with it. There's lots of stuff, and a lot of times, you introduce an idea and it gets carried forward, and then you wind up getting a whole lot of stuff out of that. So, but SAEM is just a fantastic place to go to boost your career and to get you promoted in your, in your own institution. It's, I mean, we're all kind of testimony to that.
Yeah. So this slide has some kind of rough deadlines. Certainly, these are not meant to be like the end-all be-all deadlines for these things, just kind of a rough idea of when to look out for these emails and that sort of thing, how to get involved, how to sign up for committees, and how to get involved with projects.
And these are the specific things if you are looking for career development. So you'd say to your chair, I want to do, the armed med ed thing. The application is due November 30th, and you have that information as you go to your chair with your negotiation. Hey, now I'm an APD. I need we need to have better education to improve our board scores. This is a program I want to go to. And these are nationally recognized as high-quality programs.
So I think we are close to the end of time. So I wanted to make sure, do we have any either anonymous questions or anyone else want to come up to the mic and ask any other questions?
You can also just shout them out.
Alrighty. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming to our panel. We're happy to take any questions that you have. If you think of something later that you want to submit one of the questions for, we'll keep an eye out on this, and we can kind of send out some more information, things like that.